Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone here this evening to Landford Parish Council Extraordinary Parish Council Meeting. If anyone cannot hear, because it's important that everyone can hear what's happening, please raise a hand and say can't hear you, because it's crucially important that everyone here this evening can hear the proceedings of the evening. My name is Councillor Mary Davies and I am Chair of Landford Parish Council. On my left is Councillor Nick Hall. Nick Hall is acting as Clerk to Landford Parish Council this evening. And to my right, your left, we have Councillor Robin Bird, who is Vice Chair of Landford Parish Council. If you have not already done so, can I ask everyone please to either turn off or silence your mobile phones or devices. Before we begin, I must advise you all that if the farm alarm sounds during the meeting, we will require to evacuate the building, and the evacuation is over there. You see the clear sign, and also behind you, and it's to the assembly point just at the car park outside. I would like to remind everyone that in accordance with the law, this meeting is being recorded, not only by the Parish Council, but there is a member of the public who has asked that he can record and video the proceedings of this evening. The person who is doing that is fully aware that the video is not permitted to video any person from the public. It's purely for the Parish Council members. I will now read the Nolan Principles, and I would ask that they be observed, and I'm also going to have section 25 of the Localism Act 2011. The 7 Nolan...
Thank you, Chairman. Do you have a speaker?
Pardon?
Do you have a microphone?
We don't have a microphone. We don't have a microphone. We'll speak as loudly as we can.
Okay, because it's very hard to...
Yes, that's okay. I understand that. This hall is particularly hard because the acoustics of the hall, it tends to bounce all round about, so apologies on that.
Yeah, there are a couple of chairs at the front here if anybody wants those. Yes.
So I'm going to carry on to the 7 Nolan Principles. Selflessness. Holders of public office must act solely in the public interest. Integrity. They should avoid placing themselves under any obligation to others who might improperly influence their work and not use their position for personal or financial gain. Objectivity. Decisions should be made impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. Accountability. Individuals must be accountable for their decisions and actions to the public and are subject to scrutiny. Openness. They should be as open as possible about their decisions and actions, with information not withheld unless they are clear and lawful decisions to do so. Honesty. Holders of public office must be truthful in their conduct and duties. I now move on to section 25 of the Localism Act 2011. This clarifies that a councillor is not to be regarded as having a closed mind simply because they have previously indicated a view on an issue. They are entitled to express their opinions, but must not give the impression that nothing will change their mind. Predetermination means a councillor has already made up their mind on an issue and is unable to consider all relevant guidance and arguments presented during a meeting. This renders the decision unlawful and can lead to judicial review or a complaint to the local government and social care ombudsman for maladministration. Predisposition is acceptable and common. It means that a councillor has a preliminary view or even a strong, publicly voiced opinion, but is still willing to listen to and reconsider their position in light of all the evidence and arguments before making a decision. Appearance of bias is also a concern. A fair-minded and informed observer should not conclude that there was a real possibility that the decision-maker was biased. I now revert to the agenda and to apologies for absence. The apologies for absence we have this evening are Councillor Jonathan Price and new Councillor Marnie Phillips.
And Zoe Clewer?
Zoe isn't a councillor.
No, she did apologise for not.
Did she? Yes. So, and also Zoe from Wiltshire Council. Can I ask, do any fellow councillors, do you have any declarations of interest?
No.
No? Okay. Now, they were rather late going out purely because it's such short notice. Can I ask, have you had an opportunity to look at the minutes of the last meeting? There is one change. That change has been made, but not everyone may have that yet. There was a reflection that a mention to Landford Recreation Ground, but it wasn't. It was No Man's Land Recreation Ground.
One more change, please. Martin Russell's name is spelt wrong in the minutes.
Right, okay. But we'll correct that. On that note, can I have a proposer and seconder, because we'll change that, because that's a minor, that's sort of a typo, but the rest has been changed. Can I have a proposer and a seconder of the minutes?
I propose.
John, second. We carry that as a motion that the minutes were a true record of the meeting. Okay. We now move on to item 8 on the agenda, and that's suspension of standing orders. To resolve to suspend standing orders 3E-F to allow public participation for a maximum of 1 hour. I'm sure everyone is aware, fellow councillors and members of the public, that the single item on the agenda this evening for decision and for discussion and then decision is the New Forest draft local plan. So I'm going to ask for a show of hands. We have 1 hour, 60 minutes, to which members of the public may be able to put their position forward. It's not possible to ask us questions on the actual content of the draft local plan, and the rationale for that is we are not the authors of the plan. We can take your opinions and your comments, but to ask questions on the plan, as we are not the authors, we cannot give any response to the content of the plan. So can I ask, first of all, for a show of hands for all who would like to make a statement or voice an opinion this evening. And this has to be open, transparent. I don't want anyone feeling they cannot ask a question. Sorry, not a question, I beg your pardon, not make a statement, because that's why we're here. Can I ask a show of hands for all? One.
Sorry, I'm just going to count everybody very quickly, if I may, because we have to take the 60 minutes and divide it by the number of people making statements. 1, 2 on this side, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, so
we'll go with 3 minutes each, and then that means that if there may be other points that are raised that come to mind when others are doing. Can I have this gentleman here? I think you were first to raise your hand.
You can do the answer.
So you have 3 minutes.
Excellent. Starts now, does that?
Yes.
If these plans go ahead, building on land that's protected at the moment, concrete doesn't unpour roads, don't uncut wildlife, doesn't return just because we wish it would. A view that took thousands of years to form can only be erased in a single planning cycle. I urge you all to object to this. Areas of outstanding beauty in the UK area protected by law, the New Forest, and all that belongs to it. We should not look to our forests and farmland to turn this into homes. At present, we are in the New Forest. The laws have protected us from private developers for many years. To change this would intrude on our peace and future well-being. Furthermore, you will alter the landscape, introduce visual intrusion, disrupt wildlife habitats, increase noise, traffic and light pollution. If this plan goes ahead, it will leave Landford no man's land's doors wide open to quick gain developments and make the New Forest that little bit smaller. The laws that could be infringed on this would be the National Park legislation, and the highest level of landscape protection in England is protecting us all at the moment. The local plan tightly controls new housing, restricts large-scale developments. Article 4 direction, remove development rights. Developments can't rely on automatic permissions. They must apply at the moment for full planning permission or even small changes. But the one that really cuts to me is the number 4, environmental protection, which at the moment safeguards our areas of our triple SSI areas, the scientific special studies, our conservation areas, special protection, and wetlands. They protect historic landscapes, heritage sites, ancient woodlands, and traditional forest character. And we may lose that if we go ahead with this. So I object.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your comments. Can I have the next, this lady here? I'm just going to say, Councillor Rob Burgess just made this, I'm sure everyone is aware that it is a consultation, but I'm just going to say again, the reason for the meeting tonight is for us to put, as a parish council, responses back on behalf of parishioners here and those who are not here. But those very valid comments, yes. Thank you.
So may I also?
Yeah.
One more question. Any comments you've made, and you've obviously gone to a lot of trouble to write these points down, you should all...
I was going to cover that later about the putting it on the plan.
Okay, that's fine.
Just at the very end. Yeah.
I went to school there. I've been there for 40 odd years.
No.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, this lady here. Can I have the question, please? Not the question, the statement.
Yeah. So mine isn't as well formulated as this man here. Mine is purely that excuse me. I'm Andrea Goff. I live just in the road, obviously here, as most people live around here. And I think it's just an utter disgrace that this has even been considered on New Forest. I think everyone's probably nodding and agreeing with me. I just absolutely cannot fathom that we have big cities full of derelict land everywhere, horrible properties in big cities that could be utterly renewed and affordable housing built there. And yet we're here all having to take time out of our day just to try and object to something that I just cannot believe is even being considered. The flooding around here is really bad. Building on lands that floods all the time, the water just runs off so quickly. Even overnight, I walked up that lane, walked my dog. The streams are just full overnight of a small amount of rain, let alone all our houses here that will be affected. So there's the flooding, there's the wildlife, there's numerous animals on that field. I cannot object anymore. There's loads of houses being built in Totton. Anyone that's on the chat will see that a massive house has been built right behind my property there, and no one's bought it. So there's plenty of houses being built elsewhere. It does not need to happen in the New Forest, and I think that everyone needs to be as passionate about it as everyone here. So I utterly object on behalf of myself, but also my partner as well, who couldn't be here today.
Okay, thank you.
I'm David Landford. live locally on this road. Just a couple of things. I'll try and speak as clearly as possible because the sound can be difficult coming from that side. I agree that it is surprising that this is being considered to be built in a national park. Right from 1949, that's looking at the National Park Access to the Countryside Act of 1949, it sets out that the National Park authorities should be protecting the scenery, the beauty and the heritage of these areas. The National Planning Framework more recently increases those protections, and people think that the latest government has been decreasing the requirements for planning. Well, that's not true. In the Level Up and Regeneration Act of 2023, authorities must seek to further increase the statutory purposes of natural landscapes. For any building, especially a major development like this, there has to be an exceptional circumstances test. It has to be, it can't be done anywhere else. Well, I looked, and the latest figures from April 22 state that there are 119,103 square kilometres of unbuilt land in England. That's about 91.3% of it, which again makes you wonder why people are even trying to build on a national park and building alongside an SSSI. Okay. And there's just one other thing on it. People talk about need and exception and the building of affordable housing. Well, that's been quite a big problem in the country recently, with big developers promising affordable housing and then changing it at the last minute, and it never happens. The Peabody developers were taken to court by the council earlier this year. Essential Living did the same thing. Creative accounting makes it suddenly all not worthwhile. We can't possibly afford to add in the social housing. Cellar developers had the same thing up in a Swiss cottage. The Committee for the Protection of Rural England are highlighting this problem exactly. And the Competition and Market Authority recently did a multiple fine on 5 large developers who had wangled their way out of providing the affordable housing, fined them over £100 million. So that included companies like Barrett. So another question would be, has the National Park Authority...
So I'm very sorry, you need to finish off just a bit. I'm just conscious...
Okay, I'll stop.
Thank you. I think, John, there's a gentleman, or is it lady? I can't see. Gentleman.
I'm going to stand up because I think it's
that's easier
progressive. Yeah.
to hear.
Well, I lived in Devon for only 5 years, but why are we being considered for inclusion in the plan as a defined village? Why is Devon being merged with that? I got no satisfactory answers from the planning who had enough this whole route went to the consultation there. What was around on this, that and the other. I'm not entirely sure whether the housing development out here fits into the defined village. Do we have to be a defined village in order for the housing to go ahead? As we all know, defined village planning controls are reduced. There'll be no 30% limit on how much you can extend your house. So I used to live in a town where half the road was bungalows, and over a 10-year period, all the bungalows were turned into 4 or 5 bedroom houses. Well, we want 2 and 3 bedroom houses. We don't want big mansions being built. So in a defined village, that is what will happen, because the normal planning rules will apply. The planning officer said at the consultation that infill would be permitted. The presumption being that the planning application would be supported by the department. They'd have to find a very good reason for you not to be able to do it. So if we get to be a defined village, a lot of planning controls are going to go out the window. And that change the character of villages. As we know, currently 4 defined villages sway Lyndhurst, Ashurst and Brockenhurst, but they're nothing like Landford and Landford. They've got railway stations, they've got doctor surgeries in the towns, the villages, they've got retail premises providing jobs. And a draft plan, as they're proposing it, Section 4, Strategic Policies and Development Principles. The top paragraph, I think it's 418, I'll just read 3 lines of that. That a review of the settlement hierarchy has revealed there are other villages which offer a good range of facilities and services, and they could offer opportunities for sustainable development. These being Cheltenham, Landford and No Man's Land and Redbridge. Well, I don't recognise that at all. I don't think that No Man's Land and Landford have that sort of facilities. So I think for that reason, the draft plan is inerrant, if you like. The Methodist Hall consultation, the poster said, No Man's Land and Landford are sustainable locations for new development because they offer local jobs. Well, in No Man's Land we've got a garage, a pub, a part-time restaurant, that's about it, and a term-time school for jobs and stuff. Landford's got a little bit more if you include the industrial science head on the A36. Community facilities, all got a village hall, a reading room in No Man's Land. Well, there's no doctor if you go 10 miles to Romsey or 4 miles to White Parish. Or you could go by bus, but you can't, the bus is going to go every 2 hours. And if you want to go to work in Salisbury or Southampton, well, you can't get there for an 11 o'clock start and get back at 5 o'clock because the buses don't run to agree to that. And if you live in No Man's Land, it could be over a mile walk to get to the bus stop.
Sorry, we've only got a very short time left.
Okay, so in conclusion, the plans are trying to make us fit the definition of the defined village. If it doesn't end up, I urge the Parish Council not to support the adaptation of the idea that we should be defined village.
Hello, I'm Cam Houston, and I was on the committee for affordable housing. I still think Landford possibly needs affordable housing for the locals and the locals only. It doesn't need 30 houses for anybody willy-nilly coming into it. If 30 houses were built on there, I feel we'd have to renew a school and the doctors and make it far more accessible for everybody in the village. I think as the plan goes, I do not approve it, but 10 affordable houses that people I think will leave with their children and to make the village a better village. I moved here 22 years ago and it's the best place I've ever lived all my life. Sadly I'm leaving because we're going and emigrating to Australia, but I still would fight that we need at least some affordable housing for everybody here, nobody else.
Right, there's time for residents.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Willis, I'm on the First Road. I'd just like to reiterate the points about the defined village. We are totally different from any other defined villages. We're a ribbon development village of a wide direction and length, and we don't reflect that at all. I'd also like to point out, when we first went into the national park, we had more facilities. We had a bakery, we had a separate post office with a shop, we had a farm shop. Buses ran more frequently. The idea that we are now basically prepared to be a defined village is ridiculous. Thank you.
Are there any more points?
Thank you. Carol Walsh, I'm in Leeds Grange. I have a defined notes with me because I think a lot of people have done a lot of research already and might be better focused in terms of speaking about that. And you said no questions because you're not the authors of the plan, but I do have a question which I think is valid to ask, which is, depending on the outcome of all of this, what will the Parish Council be doing? Will you be taking notes, hopefully, of everything that's been discussed today? Will you be where you stand on this, whether you think it's all a good idea, and it's not as authors of the plan. I think it's valid to ask the question, what are you going to do following this meeting tonight?
Well, as per the agenda, this is going to be... It's perfectly clear what we're going to do tonight. The discussion and the decision is the next agenda item for Landford Parish Council in their response to the park. And you will all be able to witness that because you are here. The response is due to be in by Friday.
Yes.
So that's why we are as transparent as we possibly could be, and our full discussion, debate and decision will be held this evening on the points that we're going to respond as consultees to the New Forest National Park draft plan.
Why do we have so little time to make our objections to this plan? Why is it being rushed?
We didn't put the timetable together. We had no idea of the dates until very last minute, when the dates were put out, that the park were going to have their drop-in sessions. And it was felt that there was no point us having a meeting until everyone who wanted to would be able to meet with the park to attend the drop-in session. So that was Friday. We've got the meeting today, which is Tuesday. It was going to be tomorrow, which was Wednesday, but we need time to collate with our new locum clerk to get the response in on Friday. The timing is incredibly tight, and I have to say that that is personally how every single person in Landford Parish Council feels also. Because the plan was, I'm not going to go into debate on that, it's not my place to do that, you can take that back to the park. Any questions on... John?
I'm sorry, but Council Council produced this 2 weeks ago. This document here, which we picked up and copied for them, which is exactly the same dates as what you're telling us now, that you've only just found out about. Oh, come on.
We all knew the local plan came out on the 5th of November.
Look,
that's perfectly...
How many more times are you going to ask the same question? We don't want affordable housing.
This is not about the Affordable Housing Working Group. This is about the New Forest National Park draft local plan.
Mary, with all due respect, you're on so many committees, as a list as long as your arm. Who do you represent?
When I am here...
committees within, I counted 6 today.
I'm on quite...
And I think you're probably joining another one in January.
Well, I don't know which one that would be, but I'd love you to tell me. No, just let me say, we are all here this evening on behalf of Landford Parish Council.
Well, you just did.
But you haven't heard what we're going to say yet. We're going to go into debate and discussion and decision on the next agenda item. Are there any other points?
On the 4th of February, all parish councils in the National Park were sent a publicity flyer that included you. On the 24th of February, the first public consultation was held in Bramshaw Village Hall. Why did you not know about that?
We did. We were there. Many of the parish councillors were there. The new local plan, we had no idea of the content of the draft local plan until that was published on the 5th of November. And you can ask any member of the New Forest National Park Authority to ratify that.
Believe you I will.
Pardon?
Believe you I will.
Good.
Mary, can I make a statement, please? In that I I personally, and I think a lot of other people in this room, feel miffed and aggrieved that the advertising of this meeting and the parish plan, from the parish council's point of view, has been almost non-existent. And there was one Facebook page that I picked up on, that I then formed another group, and we've plugged it on Facebook and the advertising of it here, but we've had nothing from the parish council other than one.
I can add to this that we had a huge problem with their website. Well, we have tried to sort the website. We do not have, and we have tried to sort the website. We have people who are now.
People in this village that will do hand deliveries of flyers or anything. You can see from the amount of people who have turned up this evening that there is a big opinion on this, okay? And to have a few days left is not acceptable.
Absolutely. Being railroaded.
Yeah.
Can I just make one very short, simple point too, really? Firstly, we moved here in February from over 2 hours away near Bristol to get away from social housing. We paid a lot of money to come and move here. Not being a snob, I don't want that coming here. I don't think anybody else does. And secondly, on an even more important point, you're shrinking the area for the local habitats into such a SI area. You're taking away, from an area that should not be touched, that's there for the wildlife. That's why we moved here, was the second reason, for the beauty of the national park. And we don't see that taken away, so we absolutely object.
Hello, my name is Nadine Jones. My husband and I live with our 3 young children. Chapel House, we are the residents right next door to the plot. We bought the plot with our 3 children. Having the views, we paid a lot of money, as I'm sure it resonates with everyone in here, why they came to the village. We moved out of where affordable housing was. We worked our butts off, absolutely worked our butts off to give our children this life, the position that we're in, to stand in the garden and have our children watch the deer, watch the owls, watch the bats. We have friends and family that come over from White Parish on a weekly basis to sit in our garden, even in winter, to watch the deer grazing on this plot of land that they want to come in and build on. It's disgraceful, it's a heritage site, it's the National Forest, and we totally, utterly object. There's not anything richer you could give these 3 children and everyone else here and their children than the wildlife growing up in the beauty of the National Forest. This development will give them nothing else and give us nothing else. We object.
Thank you. So just still digress from everything that's been said, so I would agree with what's been said, but still in my head there's 2 separate things. There's the development that's been discussed, and then there's the proposal or the idea around the defined villages. So if I'm sort of focusing more on the defined village aspect of it, and speaking, I come from the other end of no man's land and speaking with a lot of the residents' opinions, such as I feel like my voice there, they are opposed to the defined village. Sorry, I got that 100% right, completely opposed to defined village, echoing the comments of the gentleman just in front of me in the grey, in terms of infrastructure, that it feels like we're not like the other villages who come to that village, squarely Ashurst, who don't have the infrastructure, and feedback I've heard is it's fitting a square peg into a round hole. So the general feeling from the area that I come from, further down the road, and I'm not committing so much on the development, but more so on the defined village, which I think are 2 separate tactical issues which overlap is opposing defined villages.
Are there any other points? John.
Thank you. I just want to address the Parish Council on two particular points, please. I relate to SB 39, beg your pardon, in the document which refers to the possible development over the road, in the field over the road. I point out that when you look at how you're going to access that field, you're almost certainly going to have an access onto Handforth Road. I don't know how many of you have been down by the school during what you might call school rush hour, but quite frankly, it's an absolute chaos down there. You've got cars parked on the verge, cars parked in the road, cars trying to get in the car park, cars trying to get out, the traffic going backwards and forwards. It's a wonder there hasn't been a serious accident down there. The thought that they might possibly build 30 more houses on that particular field means you've got far more vehicle movements coming out of that field trying to get through that particular junction. It can only make things terribly worse in terms of pure chaos in that particular area. The other aspect, it talks in the document about suds, which is a way of getting rid of the surface water. That water, whichever way they try to get rid of it, will end up in the black water. That particular point where there's a stream goes under the road and joins the black water the other side of the fence, that area floods quite badly, quite regularly during the winter. And you're now talking about 30 houses which the drainage will then be added to the river at just the wrong point. That causes flooding not only on their property, but also in Cleve Lane. The other point that nobody seems to have mentioned so far, and this is very important from the point of view of the Parish Council, it is whether Landford becomes a defined village. The last thing we want is for the village to become defined, as it were, from a development point of view. It's a thin end of a very thick wedge. At the moment, we're a rural exception site. Therefore, the development is very limited. But once we become a defined village, you're opening a can of worms. It means that people who would not probably offer their land for sale at the moment, knowing full well they're not going to get planning permission, would suddenly find that the door is wide open. And I don't want to see Landford turned into what is the equivalent of West Rello, which is one large housing estate.
John, those comments were very well made, and it is very good when someone comes up with an actual policy, because that's how I feel that when people are responding, and this is important, everyone puts their own response back to the New Forest National Park for that to be taken into consideration. But I also ask that when everyone does, that they look at the policies, because when you put in the policies that you don't think it meets, it shows, just as John has mentioned there, it shows you understand what you're saying and they understand fully. There's no wriggle room then, that people then do understand it doesn't meet the policy. For example, I've got about 12 policies, more than that it doesn't meet. One of them certainly being transport, flooding, amenities. There are so many specific policies there that I strongly ask that whoever, again, and I'm saying this again because it's so important, when you send your response back and you say we don't want it here because we want, for example, to be able to look over the hedge. I understand that, by the way. I had a large property in Scotland, and I don't mind saying it was a large property, sat in an acre with an old-fashioned walled garden, and the farmer next door had planning to be able to build. So I understand where many are coming from, but it's only by putting policies down in your response that the park are going to, and the inspectorate actually, are going to fully appreciate what you're putting in. John, thank you for, I was going to mention that, but I brought that forward because thank you very much. Are there any more points to be raised?
I just want to reiterate the defined village. I moved to no man's land approximately 21 years ago, just before we changed to the reforest planning authority. In the next 5 years, the view from my front door changed quite dramatically. There's all the infill left over from Salisbury, Wiltshire, to take it off the place. And of course, the subsequent of that has slowed down dramatically. If we become a defined village, that will just speed up again. You know, tandem building, nice, we've got nice sized gardens, green spaces, one of the reasons many people live here. What you pay for is relatively material. The controls that the National Forest provides are vitally important to us remaining a rural community and not an urban community. We have no facility for urban community, so we remark that buses, I tried to get a train into London next week, or later this week. There are no buses that match that. You know, you have to take an late afternoon train, which you can't guarantee that the one bus that comes will get you there, you know, 2 hour wait for the next one. But the defined village is a really significant issue, which I didn't really understand until I was the process. And we really do not want to go back to the tradition we were in 20 years ago when we saw pretty much.
Make a point of order, please, Madam Chairman. Could I remind members of Parish Council that when you vote, you can ask for your vote to be recorded personally in the minutes of the meeting if you so choose.
John.
My name is John Fairhurst. I'm doing the video and audio this evening, but I was quite surprised when on Friday I went to the Public Consultation and spoke to the two planning officers there. Should have got a crook in my throat. But seriously, I wasn't aware there was another public consultation held in February, March of this year. And that was the direction of travel as it relates to Regulation 18.18 Part 1. We, most of us, have just seen Part 2. My statement is that I couldn't find anywhere in our parish council minutes of meetings or any feedback to the document that Councillor Davis was talking about, which is this one, which probably you haven't seen. This document was actually circulated in January of this year, and it refers to Regulation 18 Part 1, basically call for sites. Now, this document was circulated throughout the New Forest National Park as part of their consultation programme. Now, I'm wrong, I didn't see it because I was away or I was on holiday, but this document hasn't seen the light of day in the parish. Has anyone seen this document? However, just up the road, or just down the road, is a place called Copythorne. Now, Copythorne is actually part of the chair's responsibility as the north-east quadrant of the New Forest National Park quadrants, and she chairs that group of parish councillors. I was surprised to find their findings from their public consultation, which they circulated around in their village. There was a public meeting which we heard this evening from the chair that was in Ramshaw. I wasn't aware of that, and it was a public consultation. My statement is, I don't understand how we in Landford didn't get sight of this, and if I've spoken to some councillors who were sitting actually on the committee in the months of February, March, no minutes. If you look at the parish council minute, there's no minutes at all about this. My question is, why?
John, we will go back and check that. There are minutes on that. Councillor Zoe Clear also forwarded minutes on that. Let me finish. And also, because I went to the drop-in session that they had in Bramshaw, and they mentioned numerous members of the public from Landford Parish Council had visited and spoken to the officers of the park. So it was documented. I will need to go back and check that out. It was certainly documented, and Councillor Zoe Clure also forwarded documents, and it was on her Facebook page, I believe. But I will check that.
Can you verify also that the Landford Parish Council have got a document of the comments that they submitted to the New Forest National Park as part of the public consultation?
I need to go back, that's what I'm saying. I need to go back
and
I need to go back and look at the minutes on that. But certainly the Parish Council and members of the public were aware, because it was discussed at a Parish Council meeting, or it was certainly in my chair's report that was on, and Councillor Zoe Clure notified that also. But we'll check that out. I can't answer, John, until I go back and check.
I'm not a member of Facebook.
Councillor Clure, excuse me, one minute at a time.
Zoe's Facebook page, and she was too late in any publication. If you check it, go back on the Facebook page. There was no notification for Landford to be involved in any public consultation.
I live a mile away and I didn't know anything about this.
There's a simple solution. Everybody who's heard about it, they put their hands up.
Well, certainly there were members of the public at that, because the park confirmed that members of Landford parishioners did attend that meeting. But it's not for me to question if people did or didn't. I need to get to the bottom of it. So I will. Are there any other points that people would like to raise before we go on to?
Supposedly 15 affordable houses on that site, which seems to allow for other development. I would like to ask you where you got the information from, or where the National Park got the information from, that there is a need for affordable housing. Because as you well know, you sent out several surveys, and at the end of it, you disbanded that group, and I was in this room when you did it, and I asked you how many people returned the form to say that they wanted affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
You said to me, none.
Well, that's not technically true. They did. The document was produced. Councillor Damien Swancott put it on the screen for the people who went through the first consultation and the responses that came back. But that door's closed now. We know that. But what I'm going. But we didn't have any back from the second one. There were specific reasons on that, and the two reasons I mentioned here, but I'm not going to go over those today. But what everyone has to understand is that this is a draft local plan. It's not a planning application, and it's not a definite. It's an if. It's an in principle. So we don't have the detail of how the park measured out. But if you look at the current local plan, any development that's more than 10 houses within the New Forest National Park that is not, when it's not a defined village, it's as an exception site. And the policy states that 50% of the houses must be social and affordable housing. So they haven't carried out any means test, if you want, for the want of a better word, if there are enough people on that. And as Councillor Zoe Clure mentioned at the last Parish Council meeting, for anyone who would want to be considered, if it were to come to fruition that this is passed and approved by the inspectorate, she urged that anyone who does, that they go on to the housing register for Wiltshire, because this parish is quite different to many of the others. The fact that the park are the housing authority, no, Wiltshire are the housing authority and the park are the planning authority. So therefore it's Wiltshire on the housing authority for people who wish to be considered for social housing or affordable housing. But that's certainly one of the questions that I would be asking, because there's no definition of how they're going to measure affordable or social housing, and that's crucial.
One more thing, Mary, how did the New Forest National Park identify that site then?
All I know is, all I know that is a way back, probably about a year just now, or maybe before that, all clerks, and it was sent to the clerk. This isn't any information that would normally go to a chair or a vice chair. All clerks in the New Forest National Park were sent a document asking for all of the facilities that are there in the park. So playfields, if it's church, if there's a shop, if you have bus stops, everything like that. But I don't know what they did to that. And we had no idea that this was going to come to fruition. So that answer, I don't know, but that could be one that you could send an email to the New Forest National Park asking them, because it was new to us. It was new to find out of the other parishes who are affected by this, and I don't think that I'm saying anything out of turn to say that we were all quite shocked, because we did not expect here, if you look at the transport and you look at everything else that we have in our parish, we did not expect, well, we didn't know they were going to create more defined villages.
I think, Mary, the question was, how did that site get put forward?
The landowner must have put the site forward, and the problem is we don't know. When there's a call for sites, the only time that members of the public are aware that a site is being put forward is when a formal planning application is in. But the New Forest National Park did a call for sites, and they must have responded to that as a call for sites. So this doesn't mean that they're definitely going to get planning. But they put out a call for sites, and the New Forest National Park have considered that. And I believe there's someone here tonight who's offered land as well, also, to the park, that they have land. But we don't know that. We don't know how that came about, other than there was a call for sites.
Mary, can I say that that document that was circulated in February, it was basically a scoping document, in that they asked in that document landowners that were prepared to put forward their land for development purposes.
Correct, that's a call for sites.
And the Anderson estate, the Hampford estate, put forward that field for development purposes. They offered it as part of the response to that scoping document.
Yes, that's correct, but the parish council didn't have anything to do with that.
No, I know.
Absolutely not.
Can I just ask a question? That field is agricultural land, so I don't understand how you can build houses on agricultural land. Yeah, and I mean, if it goes ahead, surely as it's agricultural land, that housing should go for farmers or farmers' children, because it's agricultural land, so you have to have a connection to that. Yeah, we've got agricultural land, so I'm flabbergasted how it's actually been put forward.
Can I just ask a quick question? You mentioned about, we have to look at all of these policies, and when we dropped it the other day, the policy book was like this big. And so are you saying that for us to be taken seriously and everything that we have submitted so far is not good enough, we have to go through this national park like list of policies, and everyone has to formulate a really well thought out objection to those policies, rather than saying what people have said here and that isn't necessarily as well thought out. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think what I'm saying is those comments that everyone makes are incredibly valid, and they have to be looked at because they're from the heart, from everybody who is putting in their own individual ones. But later on in the proceedings, because I would expect people to know what those policies are, but I am going to read out some of those policies that people can take note of, and if they want to add them, they can add them, because it's incredibly difficult for someone to understand what does this policy mean, what does that policy mean. I don't want it to be a grey area. So I'm going to cover that off later, because that's crucially important that everyone is aware of what some of those policies are. And
you've already submitted our objections to that. Do we just submit again? No, I don't think you can submit, but you can say further to, and it shows that you're just adding more to it. You can, I mean, that's if I were putting something in, I would. No, I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just feeling that it may help the purpose of if you don't want it to happen. That's really what I'm saying. But I'm going to give some of those policies later. But there's no new way past the 19th.
No, there isn't, sadly. There isn't. The timing could absolutely not be worse. For everyone round the table, including myself, I'm only 5 weeks out of being cardiac unit for 3 weeks out of 4 with 2 very serious events. The last place I want to be here tonight is putting forward and chairing an event when we didn't have enough time to be able to take this forward. And that's not all poor Mary. I'm just saying we all personally have things where we would rather be than here this evening, but it's important to all that we are here this evening.
So if we put a vote here tonight with all these people saying if they want to object or not to a Divine Village or the housing, you're representing us. So if we put our hands here now, how many object to a Divine Village?
No, this is purely. It doesn't. That's not how it works. You don't put a vote forward. We are recording. This is being recorded, and this will be played back because it's crucially important we represent the parish when we give our response back.
Right. So how many object to a Divine?
I'm not taking. I'm sorry. I'm not taking.
How many object to the housing development?
Yeah, as well.
Can I take this?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I think with the strength of feeling that it's very clear that people have, and this was not unanticipated. It's really, really important that every single person in this room who has a feeling, a strong feeling, I think has a strong feeling, whether for or against, your decision is your decision, but you must go on to the New Forest Planning portal and give your feedback individually. If one person gives feedback on behalf of 10 people, that's no good. Every single one of you needs to go on there and give feedback, and some of it is going to be heartfelt feedback. Other people may know about a few of the policies. Some people may know about flooding. All these things are talked about, and they may help you in formulating your own response. But you individually have to go on. So I strongly recommend that you go on that website and give your feelings, but also back it up with any facts that you know about, because facts are always carry weight. And if you can quote a few DPs, these policies, if you've come across them in the past, and people who have maybe done building work might know some of them, or been at parish council meetings, you may hear about some, and then please give those responses. The purpose of the parish council here today is to get a sense of your feedback, and I think we've got a fairly strong sense of that feedback and the strength of feeling, but we have to formulate a response as a consultee, because the parish council, it's not individually.
No, I'm just going to move on.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the parish council have to provide some feedback as a consultee, taking into account we're representing you guys, but you have to go onto the website and report your own feelings individually. We will give a response that includes reference to the appropriate planning policies.
Yeah, I will. So we're closing item 4, and we're going to move on to item 5 for parish councillors, and we're going to discuss the New Forest National Park local plan. And it's important for everyone to remember, all fellow councillors, that when we are here this evening, we are taking into consideration, obviously, the views of everyone here, but also the views of those who are not here and had their thoughts that they spoke to fellow parish councillors about last Friday at the drop-in session. Robin, would you like to, have you any comments that you would like to add at the moment? I'm just going to go from the right over to the left.
Going back to the principles you discussed or read out at the beginning of the meeting, it is our job as parish councillors, I think, to listen to our parishioners and to, if needed, to change our views, but otherwise to express our views, because it's our job to represent them. And I think Rob mentioned that, you've mentioned that as well, so I'm just reinforcing that point. I heard very clearly in today's discussion that we are very concerned about Landford and No Man's Land jointly being declared a defined village. And I think that has to be part of our response. I also heard very clearly that there are strong objections to the process so far, and I think we have to take that on board. So I have heard a lot of people saying that. My personal view, I was before I became a parish councillor, I did sit on the affordable housing group for a while, and I would reiterate that that group was disbanded with no action with respect to affordable housing. So I think that actually is then a moot point. And what we need to discuss is how do we respond to the local plan from the New Forest Parish, from the New Forest Planning Authority. So that would be my input to the meeting.
Adam?
So I'd like to propose that we object to being a defined village. I think it would be a disaster for No Man's Land. Every small house there would be turned into a mansion, and it would just spoil No Man's Land entirely. I also propose that we object to the housing development just across the road there. Even if you're for it, I think objecting to it is still the way to go. Because once we've said yes, you've got no power left. You're quietened, you've ticked the box. So saying no is a strategic thing to do, and I think the council should do it. I go on for the need for housing. There's no need for housing. It's a government method for calculating it. I wouldn't trust the government to calculate how many numbers there are on dice. There's no one on the social housing list for this area at the moment, and the affordable housing consultation more or less proved it was not needed anyway. Sewers, which I don't think anyone's mentioned, they don't work round here anyway. We get lots of rain and there's sewage running over the roads, down paths, and they're proposing to stick another 30 houses. It doesn't seem like a good idea. Climate change, that's going to make more rain, more overflow. Their solution was to add more soakaways. You can't add a soakaway when the groundwater is at maximum. It just doesn't work. It's a ludicrous, bureaucratic answer to something. Obviously, there's flooding just down the road, which people have mentioned. Employment and traffic, I think people have covered. Further development. Is this the thin end of a wedge? 30 houses, could it go up to 300? You'd need something really, really tight to be satisfied that wasn't going to happen. And New Forest Zone rules. I sent round on the WhatsApp group something written by Helen Vincent, which she also posted, won't she? She's here. Thank you. It's next to an SSI, and I've already mentioned climate change, the runoff and everything. It's just going to make it worse, so I propose that we object.
Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. I have to say I agree with my fellow councillors that have spoken so far. I think if I was just to try and sum it up into key things that I'm concerned about, I am worried about the defined village classification because of infill that will happen naturally should there be more pressure brought to bear by the government to increase the number of houses that need to be built in the New Forest. Once you've opened the door slightly, I think the floodgates could open and will open. I'm also a bit concerned about the village it's a local village, and we came here from a town about 5 years ago, and we've absolutely loved it here. And we are concerned about it being spoiled. And it just seems to me that because there has been no proven housing need, that it won't be local farmers' children and families that go into those houses, and it won't be local people that go into those houses because there is no demonstrated housing need at the moment, and there's nobody on the housing register, well, there certainly wasn't last time it was debated. But I just feel that we'll be used as the houses that will be there, they'll be used for housing people from Salisbury and other areas. I don't think they'll be used for housing people from our local area, which is a real shame. So I think the whole reason for having this development of 30 houses is in order to satisfy some statistics that have been put forward by central government for housing numbers. So that's where I come from. So yeah, I don't agree with either the two villages becoming one defined village, and I don't agree with the development of 30 houses or more where they are. In particular, I feel for the people who live very close to that, because you do look at the deer in the fields in the morning. That's part of being in the village that we're in, and enjoying the area. And I think we'll all start to lose a bit at a time of our enjoyment of the area. So that's how I feel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Shall I carry on my part, or shall I give you Ian Nissen over to you?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Yes, thank you. I agree with my fellow councillors. Defined village scenario, to my mind, is a nightmare, and I would have real concerns about notions of infilling, potential for massive increased footprints on housing, and essentially just the loss of planning control. So a defined village is, to my mind, is a no-go. The housing development, I have very strong mixed feelings, because I am aware of young families in the community who've had to leave the community because they can't afford housing. Young families who've had to leave, they still work in Landford, but they live the other side of Southampton. So that's a worry. I have a concern for a local business who only on Friday said that he is struggling to get a workforce because he has nowhere to house them, that they can't afford housing within the locality. So I do feel that there is a real need for affordable housing within the parish. That's my own personal feeling. Having said that, I think Councillor Hill probably is right. I think we should be saying no. But if it comes that it is going to happen, then I think, will have a strong hand to, I use the word negotiate, but I think you'll understand what I mean, as to what happens, how much is developed, and to have a real impact in arguments regarding flooding, etc., etc. I think we would have a stronger hand to play, my own personal opinion, a stronger hand to play if we said no. So I do have a concern about affordable housing in the community.
John?
There's not a lot more I can say. I think Adam and Rob have really brought everything home, exactly how the village feel about affordable housing defined. So I really support what Rob and Adam's views. I'm not going to repeat everything they said because I think everybody did an applaud of what's therefore is why we put it forward. So that's what my views are. I agree with objecting to object.
Thank you, Mary. Yes, I've heard some very convincing arguments there. I've heard a lot of people talk about environmental issues, environmental protection, and more nuts and bolts issues, if you like, flooding and the traffic chaos at the school. We've heard one person say we need affordable housing, and we've heard several people say we don't, so I'm sort of kind of up in the air on that. But whilst I hesitate to make it a 100% approval, because I'm just a bit ordinary like that, a bit difficult like that, I find it very, very difficult to have any other conclusion that a defined village is a bad idea, and that opposing this development is the right thing to do now, at the very least, and certainly long term I have concerns about it as well. As many of you have said, I moved to the village 11 years ago for very similar reasons. We lived in North Baddesley, and coincidentally, 18 months after we moved out, there's a development of 300 houses going in behind my old house there, and it's causing chaos. So, yes, for those reasons, very much on board and would recommend the opposition to the development and the defined village.
Yes, I very much of an opinion that for the villages to become defined villages, my concern is that it's going to lose the character and the whole being of the villages as they are. I do feel there is a need for affordable housing, and I genuinely say this because there are people in the community that we know who we know as being parish councillors who have said that there is a need for affordable housing, and there is a need by some employers in the area for affordable housing. So I'm sorry, this is purely the parish council's talk. We don't engage with the public on this. This is the parish council making the decision. However, I do have major concerns on the impacts, and I'm going to say that I agree. I'm against the principle of a scale of development as that, although I do feel there is a need for some affordable housing within the village. And I'm going to give the policies as to why I'm saying what I'm saying. With regard to policy SP3, that is major development, and I feel that it's going to take away from the ambience and the feel of the parish council to have major development. And my fear is the same as absolutely most of the people, I think I'm saying correctly here this evening, that we don't want to become a village that's absolutely unrecognisable in the future. The general development principles would require to be upheld. For example, if we say we are against it, and if the inspectorate were to come back and say, well, I'm sorry, you're having some, I think we have to put some tight rules in place. and one of them, the General Development Principles, DP2, are upheld, that any principles of development would have to align in with the parish as is at the moment. We have to look at spatial strategy also, and that's meaning that it's looking at the need of the local community, and that would be SP4, because the community, we're talking here just now on, for example, affordable housing and social housing, but I don't hear anyone mentioning there may be a need in the community for those who wish to downsize. The biggest problem we have here in this village is the fact that there aren't properties of a smaller size that people can then move downsize because they're becoming empty nesters. We need to look at SP7, and that's the landscape character. The landscape is incredibly important for the natural and the habitat landscape. And we have to be very conscious of exactly what John is saying. I should really say past chair of the Parish Council, John, DP8, which is safeguarding and improving water resources. We have to make sure that we don't incur the flooding that we have and still are incurring with regard to the Blackwater, and there's so much flooding within the village just now. It really is quite frightening, and the fact that some people's properties have ended up being flooded. We need to safeguard our green infrastructure, and that's SP9. We have to make sure that the natural habitat, and if there were ever to be any development, that there are green spaces, because people do need green spaces to thrive and to be part of nature, because not all houses accommodations can have garden space. Climate change is crucial in this, because climate change doesn't just come into the fact of people building houses and the structure of the houses. It brings in the fact it's going to bring extra transport to the village as well. And it's also going to create much more pollution. And I feel that this village, we're so important that we're almost at dark sky status. We're not quite yet. One thing I would like to join as a committee is to protect the dark skies, because it's crucially important for nature and habitat. DP12 is the flood risk, as I've mentioned, and that's crucial. If anything were to happen, we need to look at renewable energy, that it's sustainable, and that's SP14. We don't want to lose the local distinctiveness of our parish, and that's crucially important that that's maintained, and that's SP17. And again, DP18, that's design principles of the village. You know, the village, every village has its own character, and the character is made up of the various types of properties throughout the hundreds of years that the village has been here, and we don't want to lose that character. The affordable housing, I've mentioned that, and that would be, if it weren't a defined village, that would be SP27 as an exception site. And there's a ways of protecting that it is affordable housing by securing that against a DP1 on the title deeds, that it can't then be sold at a later point to be an open market. We need to be careful, because if it were to be a defined village, we don't want anyone to replace their existing property and make that so big that it's increased in size and is again not within character of the village, and that's DP35. And we also need to make sure that extensions to properties are maintained at no greater than 30%, as I say, for the very reason that we have the character of the village, and we certainly don't need any larger homes. There are plenty of large homes in the New Forest National Park without having them created here in our village. The infrastructure provision is SP38, and that's then, if any building were to come, that any monies from that, the SIL monies, the community infrastructure levy, would come back to the parish and be to the benefit of the people of the parish. As I mentioned earlier, transport is massive. You know, if you look at the bus routes just now, how on earth could we cope with more properties with the transport as it is? And not everyone who is able to have an affordable home can also afford a car. They're incredibly expensive, and we don't have the infrastructure and the facilities to be able to do that. I think that the village needs storm tanks, the storm flood tanks, that to try and protect, for example, the black water. And that's then when the water is released from those tanks, when it's no longer torrential rain that's outside. And also, if it were to come that we were overruled in this, and the inspectorate said, yes, we were to have them, they absolutely categorically cannot be there as second homes. We don't want to be a second home village. It has to be for home ownership only. And the other point that we have to mention is tranquility. And tranquility is SP15. And I'm saying this with a very personal hat on. With the health experiences that I've had recently, I am privileged to be living where I'm living, and nothing was better than my health than to be able to walk in the woods and in green spaces. And everyone deserves to be able to have the same quality, to have tranquility and peace in their own environment. Sewage, as we mentioned, that would have to be sorted. We've got a big enough problem as it is at the moment, and if there were to be anything happening, that would sincerely need to be looked at. This is not a planning application. This is the New Forest National Park with their draft local plan. And those policies I just read out just now absolutely would have to be adhered to if anything were to happen. But there are many, many more policies that any developer, if it were to go ahead, would have to adhere to also. I think people here this evening thought that I came with a misconception, dare I say, that I would absolutely be for this. I'm not. I moved to this village, not because of the village, it's my now husband, but that's slightly different. But we are here, and it's a beautiful village, and I call it home. And there's not very many places in this country, apart from where I was born, that I call home, and it's got a true passion. And I think everyone round the table here, and equally so everyone that's here this evening, feels it's their home, and they want to protect that and make sure that it's nurtured and looked after for the future and not grown out of all proportion that we don't recognise. Are there any other comments or any other items that any fellow councillor would like to add to our response to the New Forest National Park?
Do you have a list of all these?
I have. I have, and I'm going to.
Can we distribute it quickly?
There will be in the minutes, because Gail is going to type them up.
Yes, but that'd be too late for these people to include them, and I couldn't write it all down.
Oh, I've no idea how to.
Can we take a photograph? I'll put it on WhatsApp. That'll cover most people.
I wrote down a list, so I can put it on.
You've got a good list, have you?
Okay,
Well
if anybody would like any more of the points, I do apologise for those who've already put their comments in, but just to say further too, so that the park know that you just remembered something else, so to speak, if you want to add policies, because it is crucially important. The only way we can protect anything not happening is to put the policies in place. And indeed, if it's overruled, and it does happen, and I'm saying that because I do feel there's a need for affordable housing and housing for people to work in the community, but we can absolutely nail it down and try and make sure that absolutely everything is covered, if that were to be the case. Gemma?
Sorry I was late. Yeah.
This is very much an exception because we're closing it.
It's logistics. So I went onto the map where you put in a comment,
and it wasn't working. It's called like the doom scroll. I'm sorry if this was already spoken about this evening, but the wheel that just goes round and round and round is going. I was going to email the National Park and say, this hasn't been working. It hasn't been working for a number of days for people, and I think we therefore probably should ask for an extension because people can't get on there and get their...
Yeah, I understand that. I have asked that question. Apparently we're not able to have an extension because it's a public consultation and there's a set period of time, and I understand that. You wouldn't believe the whirling I went through making sure I had the right policies. No, I'm not taking any more. No, I'm not taking any more questions from the floor. We've gone through the.
It's an email address. You can put your comments in, and the National Park will come back to almost immediately accepting the points. So go to the consultation, find the email address, put it on the email.
Like.
Don't use not to use that sign. Give up. Please don't give up.
No, I'm sorry. We haven't finished our response that we're going to put to the National Park. This is.
It's relevant to this particular thing. I want to hear it.
Nick, you wanted, Councillor Nick.
Yes, I understand there's a lot of emotion about the proposals. I respect that 100%. I fully understand exactly where people are coming from. I think the one thing personally I would ask is that as we are talking about this, we're very careful about what we say, because I'm very aware, certainly on the Beach Grange WhatsApp, there's been a tremendous amount of exaggeration and numbers being thrown out which I don't personally recognise at all. And I think we just have to be very, very careful we're not stirring up and upsetting members of the community. And I know there are members of the community, certainly on Beach Grange, who have been upset by what they've read. And I'm not convinced all of it is correct. So I just think we need to be sensitive.
Are there any other points, fellow councillors, that you would like to add to our response to the New Forest National Park Authority?
I think there's probably just one point of clarity is required. So if we are sitting here and coming up with a consensus as to how...
But we haven't had the vote yet. We've still to have our vote, yeah. Is that what you're going to ask?
I was going to say that vote, if that vote is on specific points, to be included within our response.
The vote, we're still looking to have a seconder for the vote that's been proposed by Adam to be against. And if it's carried that we're against, we're also going to put the response in. If it were to happen, we want those those are our major concerns, that those policies won't be met, as I've read out.
I prefer these are the reasons why we object, rather than if it were to happen.
Yes, I don't mind either way, but I mean, as long as we get those...
We don't want it because.
So as long as we have the policies in, that's the key point, yes.
I mean, the policies are really helpful, but I think we should, in our response, go back on certain points. And again, it needs to go to a vote.
It still has to go to a vote. We haven't concluded that yet.
But the sort of things that we might be voting on are, do we want defined village? Do we want the affordable housing built here? And then there might be a couple of other key points that are part of our vote, so that when we send a response in, it's going to say what we as a parish council, reflecting the views of our parishioners, want, and take into account all the DPs.
So those are really important, because
they are, because they back up what we're saying.
They back up.
Yes, okay.
But I would like to debate that point just slightly. I think what I get a sense of is we want to oppose a defined village. I think that's the first proposal. The second proposal is we want to respond to the local plan and object to that as has been expressed by the New Forest National, the planning authority. I think the issue of do we want to give some sort of support to affordable housing, that's a separate point from we first need to object to or not to to the plan as proposed by the National Park?
The consultation is on the plan
Yes.
as proposed by the National Park.
Right.
So it's very difficult to challenge to say that because we're opposing the plan, we've had a proposal to oppose the plan, and the plan primarily is for the parish of Landford to be a defined village. So it's not a planning application. The proposal, their proposal is that it becomes a defined village for up to 30 houses, up to 30 houses initially. It doesn't go into, and 50% of that as per a defined village status, 50% of any housing on a defined village status has to be affordable social housing.
Sorry, but as part of this plan, we can object to any assuming that we were to say that we do not want to become a defined village. As part of that, and we don't accept and we reject the plan. As part of that, we'd be rejecting further development of houses in our area.
No, that's not what the local plan is. The local plan is based on this becoming, the parish of Landford becoming a defined village. If it doesn't become a defined village, there is still the opportunity, for the want of a better word, of developers or anyone in the future to bring forward an exception site of no more than 10.
But could we object to the exception site of 30 that's being proposed as part of the plan?
It's not an exception site, it's only an exception, when it's a defined village, you have, they're saying it's a defined village of 30.
Oh, including that, yes, it includes that.
Yes, including that.
Okay.
So if it were not a defined village, any developer would have to, or any going forward, it would be a maximum of 10 on an exception site, and that would all have to be affordable housing.
But the exception site is not what we are discussing today.
Tonight is purely the local plan, and that's primarily about a defined village, and it's with the nature of them saying it's, or the suggestion in principle to be a defined village that's leading to the then 30 houses, as an example.
Okay.
So, Adam, your first proposal was the objection of the parish of Landford becoming a defined village. I second that. We're doing are we having a show of hands for those who are in favour of the proposal for Landford Parish Council not to become a defined village? That's unanimous.
I think the wording should be designation as a defined.
Yes, we'll take it up. Yeah, we'll designate it as that. Could I make a proposal that the policies that I noted be referred back to the park as to the reasons why we do not want it to be a defined village? Could I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second that. Could I have a show of hands, please? Unanimous. Fellow councillors, I'm reminding you all, each of us also, to put our own responses in.
Yeah. May I just comment, Mary, that I think actually doing it this way, when I heard the discussion from the audience, well, from the representation here, I don't expect them to know all the policies. I don't think they can.
No, neither do I, but that's why I did say...
I think this is a very important way. That's our job.
That's our job.
To take the emotion and frame it within context.
But we have to frame it within the context for the response of the parish council to have weight.
Yes.
Going forward, but equally so with any of the members of the public who want to add the responses to and to do that also. Right, this now brings me on to item 6 of the agenda, and the next parish council meeting will be on Wednesday the 14th of January, No Man's Land, room North Lane, 7 o'clock, and I declare the meeting closed.
Statement is, we hold in court as a community on the back foot with this. As a community, we need to pull together and actually pay more attention to what our parish council does. Read the minutes, go to the meetings in public and get involved. And I think I'm putting myself in this as well, very much. Unless we actually take responsibility for this, these sorts of things will sneak into the back door. That's my statement.
Development, and I think that's a real letdown of this meeting and all that you've heard. I think you should have been objecting to the defined village and objecting to a development on this scale, because you haven't objected to that. You've only objected to the defined village, and I think what you've all said is brilliant. And I wish I could have backed you, but you didn't pause for breath. What you said about this being our home, it is our home, was brilliant. Thank you. But I do think as a parish council, you've missed a trick there by not putting an objection to development at this scale, and I think you've left that open to them to come back to you and say, okay, don't do the Fine Village, but we're still going to give you 30.
Gemma, if you look at the notes and you look at the plan, if you look at the New Forest National Park, no village within the New Forest National Park can have any properties built unless they're less than 10 and for affordable housing.
Yeah, but they're not, that area's not in the defined village plan. You look at the outline, they haven't included that village for a reason, and you mentioned that on the call. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to look at that as a potential site. I'm sorry, I don't trust what's happening up there when you talk them.
I have to.
You should be objecting to developments. The 10 I get. I've followed that conversation and I agree with that and what you guys have done around that. But I think the scale, I think you need to be as a parish council objecting to a development of the scale, because that's not going to be 30 houses.
Gemma,
but I think you've only objected to the defined village in what you've done. I'm sorry, but I just think you've stopped a bit short.
Gemma, I think if you go back and have a look, the meeting is closed.
No, I know
you cannot. We all have homes.
What Lizzie says, which we do need as a community to be more engaged in what these guys are doing a brilliant job. They do some fabulous things. We've got an amazing youth group that's been happening this evening, and that is thanks to these guys. They've set up and done it. And you should be monitoring what they're doing, because they're doing some great stuff. And if they're missing the information coming from us, it's because we have to get to this point before we feed into it, like Lizzie said. So please, yeah, let's take away that we are a great community and we can do something.
Gemma, I would say that every single member of the public are more than welcome to come to our Landford Parish Council meetings. There's nothing more destroying at times when you put out X number of chairs and nobody turns up. So everyone is welcome to come along to Parish Council meeting. There is more we want to do. We are incredibly pleased that now we have a full complement of parish councillors. We are up to 9. So that then means there's a lot more we're able to do within the parish that was that we weren't able to do in great detail because there were 7, but now there are 9. Thank you very much, everyone. And
can I just say, I don't understand why we're not objecting to the housing development. I did propose it.
That is...
I can understand what you've said, but it doesn't do any harm to... a second...
I think we can...
There was one of the development principles that you outlined. We can elaborate on that.
We can elaborate on the development principle, because those are tight.
I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't do any harm. So, and we don't want to develop the either, so...
Yeah, but we can't have it without... Those policies are tight. It's taken ages to do them.